Sarah trudged back from her mother-in-law's apartment, her heart heavy. Another visit wasted, and her own home neglected. Dust bunnies were colonizing the corners, yet Doris seemed oblivious, wrapped in her own grief. 3 years had passed since she lost her husband. Sarah and Doris had never been particularly close. They lived separate lives, with Sarah focused on her own little family. But after Al's dad passed away, Sarah found herself visiting the old woman more often. 15 years ago, Sarah and Michael had married young and in love. Barely 20 for Sarah, 21 for Michael. Adjusting to each other took time, but eventually they found their groove and, for the most part, were happy. Their son, Alex, came a year after their wedding. Motherhood was rough for Sarah. Michael worked double shifts, and their parents weren't much help. Everyone promised support before Alex arrived, but vanished when the real work began. So, the thought of a second child made Sarah wince. She loved Alex fiercely, but the exhaustion was undeniable. The constant demands, endless illnesses, and the strain of caring for a baby left her drained. Asking for help from Michael was pointless. He'd come home late, spend 10 minutes with their precious son, then crash next to him. Alex's night terrors often had Sarah pacing the kitchen, trying to soothe him while his father slept soundly. Thankfully, childhood is fleeting. By 3, Alex had blossomed into an incredibly easygoing child. Kindergarten was a breeze. He aced poems for school plays, ate anything on his plate, and rarely got sick. Occasionally, Al's mom would visit, giving Sarah and Michael a much-needed break by babysitting her grandson for a few hours. 3 years had passed since Doris said goodbye to her beloved husband. Their 50 years together felt like a distant dream, leaving the elderly woman adrift in her, now empty 2-bedroom apartment, unsure of what to do next. Once youthful and impeccably dressed, she had become a shadow of her former self, her posture hunched with age. Her son visited more often, and Sarah also encouraged Doris to spend time at their place. Though Alex, now 14, was getting older, he still loved his grandma's company. She'd whip up his favorite buttermilk pancakes, regale him with stories of the past, and Alex would soak it all in, loving both the food and the stories. Sarah empathized deeply with Doris's situation. She understood the loneliness of aging, having spent most of her life with her husband, Nick, before he passed away. It was a tough pill to swallow, but life had to go on. Yet, in Sarah's eyes, Doris seemed to have given up after her loss. She appeared faded, resigned, just existing. Sarah couldn't help but think of her own grandmother, who had similarly withdrawn after losing her husband, unable to find joy in anything else. Sarah made up her mind to talk to her husband. "Mike," she began, "what do you think about Mom moving in with us?" "Why?" her husband asked, confused. "Look at her. She's gotten so frail and lonely. In just 3 years, she's like a different person. She shouldn't be alone." "What if we bring her here?" Sarah explained. "One day, we'll be in her shoes. Alex will be all we have." "Do you really think she'd be happier here?" Mike questioned. "Absolutely, Mike. Here, she'll have company, she'll feel needed. She can help out, spend time with Alex. At least she won't be sitting alone in front of the TV all day. And she's not getting any younger. Time flies." This was going to happen anyway. "Why not now?" Sarah insisted. "You're right, Sarah," Mike agreed. "I should have thought of it sooner. Mom needs our support. Let's do it." That night, they made the decision. The next morning, Sarah called Doris, telling her about their plan. Doris, wasted no time and arrived within the hour, bringing a small suitcase. They opted for a gradual move-in, as neither had the energy for a full-scale operation. Doris even brought her cat along, a magnificent Siamese named Coco. Remarkably, the cat handled the move with regal calmness, surveying his new surroundings before promptly claiming Mike's favorite armchair for a nap. Doris stroked the cat affectionately before joining Sarah for tea. "Thank you, dear," Doris expressed sincerely. "Being alone hasn't been easy. After Nick passed, I felt like I could scream. But now, with you, I'll have plenty to keep me busy. I can help with Alex's homework, pitch in around the house, and spend time with my son. Thank you both so much." "No, Mom, it's us who should thank you. We're really happy to have you here," Sarah replied sincerely, convinced that bringing her mother-in-law into their home was the right choice. The conversation unfolded as expected, filled with gratitude. However, at that moment, Sarah remained unaware that Doris harbored a secret dislike for her. Though they had never openly clashed, Doris disapproved of Sarah's vibrant style and independence, considering her unworthy of her Mike. Yet, to avoid conflict, she kept her animosity hidden. 2 weeks flew by, and Doris settled into her new digs. Coco, the bold Siamese cat, claimed the master's armchair as his throne. Mike didn't have the heart to shoo him away, not wanting to upset his mom. Breakfast was a challenge. Mike left before sunrise, and Alex preferred the cafeteria food at school. Sarah often found herself sipping coffee alone, as Doris had already embarked on her morning walk. Evening, however, brought a sense of normalcy. The family reunited for dinner and shared stories about their day. Sarah bustled in the kitchen, whipping up dinner while Alex tackled his homework in his room. Mike usually hadn't returned from work yet, and Doris sat serenely, enjoying her jasmine green tea. "Sarah, you know Mike loves your homemade meatballs, right?" Doris suddenly remarked. "Why not jazz them up a bit instead of just grinding the meat? Put some extra love into them for your husband." "Mom, maybe you're right. But Mike and I have been married for 15 years, Sarah replied gently, breading another cutlet. "He loves them just the way they are." Doris fell silent, her lips pursed in disapproval. A similar scene unfolded a few days later. Mike requested some fruit compote, prompting Sarah to rush home from work to wash frozen cherries in pairs. Mike never liked cherry compote, Doris chimed in. He thought it was too tart. "Are you deliberately trying to sabotage his taste buds? He prefers apples and plums. And speaking of sabotage, what's with all the coffee and tea? It's not good for your health. You should be having fresh juices and compotes. You don't have 3 jobs like some people. You leave later than everyone else and come home earlier. You could at least put in a little effort." Doris continued, her tone dripping with criticism. "I brew what I like, Mom," Sarah countered, her initial warmth fading. "Mike and I have been married for years, and I know his preferences. Maybe he didn't like cherry compote before, but now he enjoys it." Sarah emphasized the word asks, her voice firm. Doris huffed and left the kitchen, leaving Sarah simmering with frustration. What was this about? First, the cutlets, now the compote deemed undrinkable. Things only went downhill from there. Doris seemed to have launched a silent war for Mike's attention. As soon as he walked in from work, his mother would swoop in, showering him with exaggerated and insincere affection, helping him with his jacket like he was a child. Her hand would linger on his shoulder, and she'd gaze into his eyes with a longing that seemed desperate. At first, Sarah found it comical, but soon it became clear that Mike was lapping up this attention from his mom. Previously, he'd help with chores like dishes and taking out the trash. Now, he wouldn't lift a finger around the house. "Mike, can you help Alex with his math homework? He's stuck," Sarah called from the bathroom, unloading laundry. "Let him figure it out himself. I'm watching a movie." Mike's voice echoed from the hallway. "That's right. Don't let her boss you around, son," Doris chimed in immediately. "She's always piling things on you. She can't even bother to make a decent compote. It's like she's doing it just to spite you." Frustration bubbled up in Sarah. Day after day, her mother-in-law relentlessly criticized everything: the wrong seasoning in the meatballs, the towels being too dark, even Sarah's clothing choices. It felt like she couldn't breathe without irritating Doris. Doris's behavior seemed like a deliberate test of everyone's patience. The wedge she was driving between Sarah and her grew wider with each passing day. Sarah felt close to loathing the woman for her constant nitpicking. She fantasized about kicking Doris out, but the fear of upsetting Mike held her back. After all, Sarah had been the one to suggest she move in. So, she endured it all, silently fuming, but knew she was nearing her breaking point. As she hung laundry, anger bubbled up, causing her to rip a corner of a towel. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes. No, she wouldn't let anyone bully her. Mike needed to respect her. She'd been by his side for 15 years, raising their son. She was more than just a bystander. She was his wife and the head of their household. The real storm arrived 3 days later. As Mike sat down for dinner, Doris hovering nearby as usual, she dropped a bombshell. Mike, Sarah, this might be awkward to ask, but I know Sarah's a good daughter-in-law and won't refuse. I'd really like to move into your bedroom. The couch in the hallway is terribly uncomfortable, and my back is killing me. Absolutely not, Sarah shot back before Mike could even get a word in. Mom, if you need a better mattress, we'll buy you a good orthopedic one. But I won't let you take over our bedroom. But there's a draft from the balcony. I've already got an earache from it. Doris whimpered, giving Mike pointed looks. Son, can't you have some sympathy for your own mother? Doris, the balcony is sealed with plastic. There's no way it's drafty, Sarah countered, frustration boiling over. I'm old, drafts bother me more. I'll just sleep on your bed, and you can find a mattress for the floor, Doris insisted. That's enough, Mike, Sarah turned to her husband. Well, maybe we could move to the living room, but definitely not on the floor, Mike offered hesitantly. If you're comfortable with that, go ahead. But I'm not giving up our bedroom, Sarah declared, pushing back from the table. And from now on, you can wash your own dishes. Nobody says you can't. By the way, I cooked dinner. The discussion about Doris continued between the couple after they retired for the night. Mike, she's my mom, Mike emphasized. She's the only family I have left. And what about me? Your actual wife? Sarah retorted, her voice thick with frustration. You need to choose. It's either me or her. I'm not putting up with this any longer. They left it at that and went to bed. Perhaps their argument wasn't as private as they thought. The next day, Alex came up to Mike and said, Dad, don't leave Mom. Grandma's wrong. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she stood in the bathroom. Her son, her biggest supporter. To Sarah's surprise, Mike decided to buy an apartment for his mother. They quickly sold her 2-bedroom place and found a cozy 1-bedroom with a realtor's help. Moving across the street was a positive change for Doris. She bonded with her retired neighbors who invited her to a local senior center at the library. There, seniors enjoyed tea, crafts, and chess games. Doris discovered a love for knitting, eventually gifting Mike a whopping 11 sweaters. Surprisingly, she even made Sarah a pair of mittens. Doris's nitpicking days were over. With a new social circle and evening reading sessions, she found contentment. Mike was happy to see his mom thriving, and gradually, Sarah let go of her resentment towards Doris. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more awesome stories in the future. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, and we'll see you next video.